Next is the public hearing on the T&D ordinance. Paul?
Thank you. As advertised, this evening we're going to be holding a public hearing on the adoption of an ordinance of Newtown Borough, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, amending the Newtown Borough zoning ordinance and the Newtown Borough subdivision and land development ordinance by establishing and adopting procedures for the review of a new traditional neighborhood development use, amending existing provisions of the zoning ordinance allowing for other traditional neighborhood development uses, coordinating the existing ordinances to accommodate the new provisions, and adding new definitions to the zoning ordinance. This ordinance was duly advertised in the advance of Bucks County on January 20, 2011 and January 27, 2011. In addition, a full copy of the ordinance was lodged with the Bucks County Law Library on or about January 21, 2011. I will note that since the advertisement, there have been a handful of non-substantial changes to the ordinance based on comments subsequently received from the Bucks County Planning Commission. The changes that were made were to include within the table of regulations a restatement of the maximum length of a structure, which is already included in another provision of the zoning ordinance. The second change was to renumber the additional definitions being added to the zoning ordinance. Instead of using subparagraphs A, B, and C, it's to use subparagraphs 1 and 2. And the final change was to amend a reference to what would have been added as Section 400C of the Subdivision and Land Development Ordinance, and it will correctly be added as Section 400D, as there is already a Section 400C. But again, there have been no substantive changes made to the ordinance that was previously reviewed by Council and advertised as stated. There will be a public hearing. I guess we can start with a request for the motion, and that would open it up to public comment and discussion. You want me to read that?
Sure.
All right. So I'll ask Council for a motion to adopt Ordinance Number 711, amending the Newtown Borough zoning ordinance and the Newtown Borough subdivision and land development ordinance by establishing and adopting procedures for the review of a new traditional neighborhood development use, amending existing provisions of the zoning ordinance allowing for other traditional neighborhood development uses, coordinating the existing ordinances to accommodate the new provisions, and adding new definitions to the zoning ordinance.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second. I think it would be appropriate for the public hearing to begin with not so much a presentation, but a brief summary of the ordinance by Mr. Waldorf, the Planning Commission chairperson, and then to allow council and then the public to ask any questions. And then if there are any other witnesses, they would have an opportunity, or folks with comment, they would have an opportunity to come forward as well.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. My name is Warren Waldorf, Chairman of the Newtown Borough Planning Commission. A traditional neighborhood development, or TND, is a form of land use permitted in the borough as a conditional use requiring specific approval from Borough Council. The borough's current TND ordinance, adopted in 2004 as part of an amendment to its zoning ordinance, permits only residential uses and was written to accommodate the Newtown Station townhouse development located on the former Frost Watson lumberyard property. The proposed TND ordinance will permit mixed-use development in the V2, B1, and B2 zoning districts, which currently permit the residential-only TND. Residential and non-residential uses will be permitted on the same property and within the same building in a new form of development. In addition to permitting mixed uses, the proposed TND promotes pedestrian circulation and integrated public and open spaces on a human scale and in a compact arrangement to evoke the feeling of a small neighborhood.
I'll leave it to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Any discussion by council?
I do have.
Can you pull your microphone down? Thank you.
I do have one question. I know this has gone back and forth several times, and actually I think both the Borough Planning Commission and Bucks County Planning Commission have worked together. But my only question is, has the zoning officer reviewed the final copy of this? The zoning officer has not reviewed the final copy. The zoning officer reviewed let's say a pre-final copy before it went to the Bucks County Planning Commission. Okay. For procedures, and that's it. She was very satisfied with the product. Bucks County Planning Commission accepted her recommendations and said, as we said before, this ordinance is ready for adoption. Wouldn't it make sense for her to review it once it's in final copy, or did we even provide a final copy to her? We did. Oh, we did, okay. And she was asked about it. She said, I don't need to perform a review. That's my understanding, but she was contacted by Borough Council.
Okay. Does anyone know who contacted her? Or?
I spoke with her on a number of occasions regarding this, and in essence, her response was, "This is for the Bucks County Planning Commission to review, and she can only speak to procedure. She already gave her recommendations,
Okay.
and it was ready for the final review."
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I had a question about the Bucks County Planning Commission letter of February 2nd, 2011. I was checking off as Paul was talking about the revisions. So I wanted to ask about the comments that they made on page 2, comment number 1, the distance between buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Has that comment been addressed, or?
I spoke to a staff member this morning about that. They were just basically inquiring as to how we came up with that number, the number of 20 feet between buildings. That number basically comes from an aggregate of side yard requirements of our existing ordinance. There currently in our ordinance is no building-to-building dimension specified. This is an introduction to that based on a suggestion they had made in a former review. As I said, it's an aggregate of our ordinance. It's typical of a dimension in other regional ordinances, and I know in that comment they referred to Newtown Station, which does not have a side-to-side, and did mention the spacing from an existing building there and a townhome, and they were basically requesting, has the borough looked at this dimension? Do they feel it's appropriate? We spoke about it last night at the Planning Commission. We felt that 20 feet was fine. It provides enough airspace. It also provides enough space for emergency vehicles. And it's we felt it was the right number to use building to building, let's say in a small town urban scale.
Thanks, and I do want to clarify that they did say that they support the idea of specifying building separation in their comment. And in that comment, they go on to talk about the amendment proposes a maximum of 16 units in a multifamily building, which is a fairly significant increase from the maximum of 12 units in a single building permitted in the existing use regulations for multifamily dwelling. And I'm sorry, since we just got this letter, I'm just reading it now. And I think the concern that they had was what impact, if any, does that have on building mass, and suggest that we consider the impact of that to the scale of any building. So has that issue been discussed by?
Discussed last night, also discussed today. A little history, of the 12 units per multifamily dwelling. That is based on the LaRue, which is the borough's only true apartment building short of homes on Chancellor Street and the converted mill building on Barclay. So the LaRue is the one true apartment building in the borough. It was built obviously before the advent of zoning. The number of units of 12 from my research is based on that building, which currently is in a zone that doesn't even permit apartments, multifamily dwellings. So it is a historically, I don't want to say arbitrary, but non-significant number based on zoning codes. The 16 dwelling units per acre, I certainly don't want to say is arbitrary, but certainly is generous with respect to a range of multifamily dwelling units, apartment sizes, condominium sizes, whatever you want to call them. So 16 is quite, I don't say is not high density, it's not medium density, it's not even low density, it's not even a density measurement. The LaRue building, just for comparison, is about, it's a 3.5-story building. It has 12 dwelling units of varying sizes, and it's about 70 feet long, 70 to 75 feet long. Our ordinance had said that a multifamily dwelling can't exceed 120 linear feet. So if we were to be taking a existing building that has 12 units based on ordinance at 70 feet, if we added 50 feet to that, that's almost 50% more. Just use that as a multiplier. We're adding 10 more dwelling units for that 50 feet, and that's really no way of measuring density. So even though the 16 is more than the 12, by other ordinance standards, in our general ordinance and the T&D, we could be accommodating very many more than 16 dwelling units per 120 linear foot building. So what they were commenting on is, okay, you're exceeding your ordinance by 4, and the staff member was well aware that the 12 came from a pre-ordinance statement.
Right. So I guess my question is, does the 16 units versus 12 units impact the mass of a building that would be allowed in either way?
Not at all.
Or does it encourage the largest possible building? Because if you have a limitation of 12 units, you'd have to have pretty large size apartments or condominiums or whatever in the largest possible building, and therefore the developer may not want to build such a large building with so few units. But if you have 16 units in a large building, they might be able to sell 16 units. You understand where I'm coming from? I may be totally off base, just let me know.
I understand what you're saying, but just the opposite might be true. In a building that will accommodate 16 units, that building at 120 square feet, excuse me, 120 linear feet on an acre with all the required parking and everything our current ordinance allows, we could undoubtedly get 16 of the largest apartments that you would want on that site anyway. Whether it's 12 or 16, that really wouldn't matter much. Apartments really aren't built by the number of dwelling units. It's the kind of dwelling units that will be saleable. So on the one hand, it would be a matter of entire square footage, not square footage per apartment. So the 16 is based on a pretty large apartment. We could be able to easily get up to 40, and that was one of our original numbers, 40 efficiencies or one-bedroom apartments in the same size building, and still not basically overrule the site. I don't know if that answers your question.
In a way it does. And so the bottom line is the mass of a building, dimensions of the largest building possible, doesn't change whether you have 16 or 12.
No.
Right, so that's clear. But I'm just wondering if one versus the other would encourage a building that size.
I think the opposite would be true. If we limited the number of units to 12, it would be somewhat of a discouragement from someone who wanted to come in and build a multifamily dwelling. The more you're able to build, I think more encouraging the opportunity is to build such a thing. I don't think the difference between 16 and 12 would be all that great. I think 12, though, would be a bit more limiting than letting them go up to 16. Again, the 16 units, depending on the size, wouldn't have an effect on the building size. The building size at 16 would be still easily accommodated in the site, take into account parking, open space, side yards, and all that kind of stuff.
So then why did the Bucks County Planning Commission go to mass? I mean, why did they go to questioning?
Well, their process is, and we discussed this today. I mean, they're very happy with our discussion and our product, but since they're, and I can't really quote exactly, but the comments were, since they can't make recommendations or suggestions because they have to be a neutral entity, they ask questions as to how come you have this in this location. This is what your ordinance says. Are you planning on changing it, and what reasons do you have for changing it? So I explained the reasons to them probably a bit more technically than I explained to you, and they were certainly agreeable and understanding as to why, and were very enlightened that we're opening up our ordinance now to accommodate multifamily dwellings, whereas now our ordinance strongly discourages multifamily dwellings.
Yeah.
Strongly encourages townhomes, but strongly discourages anything less.
Okay, thanks. That was my only question.
Okay. Any other questions?
I do. Just in reviewing this and hearing all of this information, I don't understand why the zoning officer would not want to review this. If it's an amendment to our zoning ordinance, why would she? She knows the borough better than anyone.
She did see it. She was involved in early writing stages. However, her role in this is not in the design portion of the ordinance. Her role is to look at how it's enforced and the procedure, and she had a lot of input in that particular area. And her suggestions were incorporated into various drafts that have already been seen by council, and that actually went to, I believe, the second review by the Bucks County Planning Commission. So she did have input. She was aware of the of the drafts and so on, and had said she does not need to see it.
It just seemed like the input.
But her role in this is to enforce the ordinance, not necessarily to write it.
Thank you.